right, welcome everyone. All right, so thank you for taking your time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community mentorship and learning. I'm your host, Dave Albright, lead solution engineer here at Salesforce and military Trailblazer. As many of you know, each week we invite a co-host or co-host to take part in the conversations so that we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. And the focus for tonight's session is change and transition. So probably a good topic in light of all the things going on in IT lately. Tonight's panel members have all co-hosted office hours on previous occasions. Over the course of the past year, they've all experienced significant professional transitions, including beginning a new role, switching industries, assuming a leadership position, and taking a work pause. With these transitions, some challenges, wins, losses, and most importantly, lessons learned. So, if you ever wondered how to successfully deal with monumental change in your professional space, this is a good session to listen to. All right, I'd like to welcome and briefly introduce our co-host panels for tonight's session. Beaty, Geralyn You, Anastasia Lianakis, which I may have mispronounced, and I apologize, Miranda, Jason Rochester, and Dennis O'Connell. Abby is currently a principal solution engineer at Salesforce. She's 14x Salesforce certified military Trailblazer with deep experience in solution design, consulting, and project management. Geralyn is a senior success manager at Salesforce. She's a military Trailblazer with a background in people operations who leveraged the Hiring Our Heroes Fellowship to transition to the Salesforce ecosystem. Anastasia is a senior director and portfolio services leader at Salesforce. A certified Scrum Master and project management professional, Anastasia has been leading projects and programs at Salesforce for nearly a decade. Next, Roger is a senior solution engineer here at Salesforce. He's a military Trailblazer and Merivis alumni board member with a background in systems administration and business analysis. Jason is a product owner and advocacy director at Frenchie Labs. Also a military Trailblazer, Jason's professional background spans project management, training, and development, business analysis, and consulting. And last, Dennis is a senior solution consultant here at Salesforce. He's a Coast Guard veteran of 30 years and a military Trailblazer. Dennis has been with Salesforce for nearly a year in the professional service space. So great to have everyone here for co-hosting office hours with me, and welcome. Normally we ask everyone to kind of share a little bit about themselves, but since we got 6 panelists tonight, we're probably just going to move into some questions. We'll talk about the journey of each of you and kind of walk through, and especially in light of what we were talking about before everyone started coming in. IT is an interesting space these days, obviously with layoffs and discussion of that. So we can talk about that and the transition and how that affects everyone's thought processes. So those of you joining for the first time, I always like to briefly explain the purpose of these office hours before we open the floor to questions and discussion. These sessions are an informal get-together for gathering of military Trailblazers and allies to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding-related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career-related goals. The next hour is intended to be an opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and help answer questions from your perspective, which will provide additional diversity of experience in the answers given. Please keep an eye on the chat window during tonight's session. I and others on this call share a lot of great information there, including learning, networking, and employment opportunities. And if you'd like to ask a question at any point during today's session, please feel free to do so. If you don't feel as comfortable speaking up, you can also post your questions in chat. I'll do my best to monitor the chat window and also be looking for raised hands. And finally, tonight's session is being recorded. If you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, please let me know before speaking, and I'll make sure it's edited out of the recording. So with that, I'm going to kind of pass it around to everyone and let everyone share their professional transition, and then talk about, why it's relevant to tonight. So I'll pass it off to Abby first. How has the transition from solution architect to solution engineer been for you? Did you find what you were looking for in the new role?
Yeah, so far so good. I moved in June internally at Salesforce. That was a whole learning process. Luckily, a lot of people helped me, like Roger and David Nava. So I applied internally and was able to really negotiate because I had a secure job. And so I think the lesson I learned there was I was able to negotiate for this role with more freedom than I ever have been before. And so the best time to look for a job is when you have a job. That was my lesson.
Absolutely. Roger, now that you've been at Salesforce in the SE role for over a year, what transition-related advice would you offer to Trailblazers who are considering pursuing the role?
So I think probably the number one piece of advice that I would offer revolves around the imposter syndrome. So even though I've been in the role for a year, I am just now starting to accept the fact that, you know what, Salesforce hasn't fired me yet, and I might actually be pretty good at my job. So like try to like put away those negative thoughts of like, I can't do this because transition is an anxiety-ridden time anyway. So believe that you can do it, and just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I've been doing it, I think, coming up on 18 months, and that imposter syndrome will still sneak in sometimes and punch you right in the face. It's amazing. You're just like, I'm not good enough. I have no reason to be here. And then you're like, okay, you're still here. Everything's fine. Okay, Anastasia, what are some of the benefits and challenges you experienced with your promotion?
So it's interesting when I was prepping for this. So the benefit and challenges are one and the same. So it's impact. Impact is one of my major items that I always focus on my values. And so it's great. I have an impact on many, but it's like, oh my goodness, I have an impact on many, right? So I have a lot of responsibility and I take it very, very strongly. And so just making sure it's great to push the needle forward and, make certain moves, but at the same time, it is also heavy, right? So just making sure that I, cross my I's and dot my T's, and I always joke that I'm the picketer for my team, the lady on the outside, just always the little guys. So it just can be a lot sometimes, but it's been a fantastic journey.
All right, Geralyn, you and I work together at Higher Echelon. You transition between industries and roles, from HR professional to business analyst to customer success manager. What are some parallels and differences between HR and tech industries? How did you relate your previous HR experience to your new role? That's a 10-pointer.
Yeah, David, always good to see you. Yeah, I will try and be as concise as possible. So I think for me, the biggest hurdle that I had to get over is, now in my success manager role, and even as a business analyst, I worked with a lot of external customers. And when you work in HR, a lot of your customers are internal. And so I really had to change my mindset from, okay, I still worked with customers, right? It doesn't matter if they're internal, external. You have different groups of people that you work with. You speak to them in different ways. They each have different challenges. They have different things that keep them up at night. And so really trying to break down those, just saying, okay, it's an external customer, it's an internal customer, really saying they're all customers, right? And what did I do in HR that is similar to what I did as a business analyst or now as a success manager is really just making sure that I take care of my customers, whether they be internal or external. So I think for me, just being able to talk to as many people as possible that are currently in the role that I'm in as a success manager really helped me be able to draw those parallels. Because the more times I heard it, I stopped hearing, oh yeah, my external customer, and I just started hearing my customer. And I was able to find those parallels between what I did in HR to what I'm doing now as a success manager.
Excellent. Did we get Jason in?
No. Oh,
Okay.
This Jason? Yeah, I'm right here. Hi.
Oh, hey, Jason. Sorry. I didn't see you when you came in.
There we go. Yeah.
So you've got an interesting point to discuss tonight. So when you decide to return to workforce, how will you explain your work gap to employers, and what strategy will you use to find and enter your next role? And if you want to go into a little more of that, feel free to.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll say that I am a planner at the very core of me, right? And I think planning and anticipating both the transition, the step back, and then that next step or the step back in is what will really help me champion a successful career move. Pre-planning in the fact that I didn't completely disengage from a professional capacity, right? So I'm still doing things part-time. Two, I think the overall climate, especially in tech roles, has definitely opened to, sometimes there are things external to our own control that cause us to take a break, especially now with, coming out of COVID. the entire world has been kind of slapped with a dose of awareness, right? So leveraging that, I basically have to go into, personal obligations with family and purchasing a new house, and the project management of that has definitely been almost a double full-time job, but that's where the priorities were. Financially planning allowed us to kind of get to a situation where I could feasibly take a step back. And whenever I re-engage, right? So part of the planning is kind of staying afloat within your network, right? And then whenever you re-engage, it's not a cold start. It's basically just a transitional conversation element, right? But the benefits that I would highlight are that it's kind of allowed me to take a step back and re-explore stuff, not just get focused in on a designated lane. So, highlighting some of my adventures in AI and other SaaS projects, as well as integrations with Salesforce, are basically on the pre-plan to kind of help whenever I jump back in. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And I think, everyone on here has probably watched the news, right? There are layoffs in tech now, right? Layoffs, let goes, things like that. Without being exactly accurate, I think it was like 10,000 at Amazon, 11,000 at Meta, stuff like that. It is kind of happening in IT. And so what we were kind of talking a little bit before I actually kind of let everyone into the room is that most of us coming from a military or military spouse background don't really come from that background where we're looking at massive layoffs. And so it's different. And usually on the office hours, it's talking about how to get a job. We're not usually talking about stepping back from jobs. And so this will be interesting, Doc, to hear your thoughts on this and your thoughts about, yes, I'm taking off from the workforce and what am I going to do and how am I coming back in? So I think it'll be very interesting to kind of investigate that. Dennis, how did your skills and experience as a Coast Guard Master Chief, 30 years of that, prepare you for assuming your current role as a solution consultant?
Hey, David, and everybody. Thanks for asking. Great question. I think it's the first part of this isn't limited to just being like a senior enlisted member or a senior member of the service. As military members who are transitioning, one thing that we probably discount more than anything is our level of adaptability. We've had to change jobs every 2 to 4 years, completely new environments, new missions, new people. It runs the gamut, right? So, having that level of adaptability was certainly very, very helpful in both the transition and in my current role, because sometimes the customer demands, there's time sensitive things and you have to pivot very quickly. So it really helped both with the transition and as my current role as a consultant. And then some other things, we've had as long a service as I had, or as a lot of people have had, you interact kind of almost by force with people from completely different backgrounds, people you've never met before. You get to learn a lot about, different people, their perspectives, their experiences. So that's a really valuable thing when you're dealing both with, your internal teams and your external customers. So it's another skill set that, that really is sort of embedded into us military folks. And so that's another good thing to have for transitioning and both for working in this field. And, kind of the last thing, this is where the Master Chief thing comes in, is, always speak truth to power. Don't be, bad news gets worse with time. So just, if something has to be said, something has to be said. There has to be done tactfully, mind you. But, that emphasis on being assertive when it's necessary is a really critical skill to have as well. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think, so I'm going to go into, how did you identify or decide to transition, right, for all of you? And I'll open it up and I'll tell very quickly my own story, because I still, and I hate to say this because it sounds trite, but I still wake up and go, how did I get here, right? I did 30 years in aviation. For those of you that know me, I did Army aviation, Coast Guard aviation, flew civilian as an airline pilot, flew aeromedical during COVID. And I figured I'd fly my entire life until they pretty much put me in a box. And then I just got tired of it all and somehow transitioned into tech and taught myself this stuff with Trailblazer and, you know, military Trailblazer and what was Vetforce at the time. And, you know, as Roger said, the imposter syndrome comes with that, right? When you're on there and you're like, how am I in this? What is a pilot doing here? And so there comes with that a lot of trepidation. And there's also a hard decision. And I remember specifically the night that my was like, this is it, I'm flipping. When did you all decide to transition, or what was the impetus to do it?
I can start on that, Dave. So you kind of alluded to this, but I got out of the military what seems like forever ago, back in 2013. I got out of the Army. My husband is still active duty Air Force, so I was still kind of living that lifestyle of moving every few years. And while I was always able to find a job, I felt like I was never really able to thrive in a career where, you know, I'd be there for a couple of years, just get comfortable with everyone, just start understanding the business, and then it was time to up and move again. And I got really sick of doing that. And so I looked up Hiring Our Heroes because I'd heard about it before. It was not really a thing back in 2013. And I read about this Salesforce fellowship program. It was completely remote, and most of the jobs follow on were remote as well. So that really appealed to me. So I literally went from not being an end user at all of Salesforce to jumping into the Salesforce ecosystem because of the potential to be able to work remotely. And for those of you that are military spouses out there, you understand just how important that is for you to be able to continue to grow and feel that job satisfaction. So for me, it was really a lifestyle change. And then when I started taking Trailhead modules, I started saying to myself, wow, if only I would have had these tools, or if I would have had this information in my last role, how much better could I have equipped my leaders to make decisions? And so at that point, I knew that it was definitely something that I would stick with because I saw the worth in it. And I was able to take some of those tools that I learned in Trailhead and think about them in how I would have used them in my past roles. So that's kind of how I made that transition. It was really a leap of faith for me. And I was working full time, and I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna do it because in my past lives, like I had said, no, I'm just gonna do the sure bet. I'm just gonna do like what's there. That's the right thing, right? Like let's minimize risk. And I can honestly say that I do not regret for a minute taking this jump into the Salesforce ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's really well spoken, especially from the military spouse perspective, right? How many times do you PCS and the spouse gets, and now I'm a military spouse, so I can kind of chuckle about this, right? You get offered poor pay, poor job because they know they kind of got you. And so, you know, Vetforce, Salesforce Military really provides that ability. Geralyn, I think it was you on your PCS, if you don't mind me mentioning, you know, you were like, I'm just so ecstatic to be able to move and know I have a job. And
yeah,
I think
first time ever was when I moved to Salesforce. I got to take my job with me, which was just, you know, I've had a career for quite some time now, and it's just mind blowing that this is the first time that I was able to take my job. My husband even made the comment that, gosh, why was this PCS so hard? And I said, because I'm not unemployed. That's why.
Because I'm not here to pack boxes for you, honey. Oh boy, that's so funny and so sad at the same time. How about anyone else? When did you know to transition?
So David, I'll kind of jump in here. A little backstory. So right after I transitioned out of the military, I was my last PCS put me in South Florida, right? And I knew some guys from the military who had gotten out before me, or retired, that had become permanent staff for private security details, right, for celebrities and things of the sort. And when they would roll through South Florida, they would always call me and kind of, let me get my feet wet on the civilian side. So I started doing private protection. But eventually, whenever a famous singer just had it out with me because somebody brought her a Coke instead of a Pepsi, that was kind of a critical turning point. Like I went home that night thinking, do I really want to continue wearing body armor to collect paycheck? Right. And mid 30s too, right? So mid 30s, you're still young, but things start to creak and ache and pop. And you're like, I'm not as invincible as I thought I was. Right. So that was really what kind of got me looking. And I wanted to find something more competency based. Originally, it boiled down to two real main things: one, Salesforce, and two, aviation for commercial, because I had already gotten my private years earlier. But then the travel kind of, took me away from the aviation component. As far as Salesforce, I'll admit I was scared. I was shaking in my boots, right? I mean, I was not an IT guy in the military. Like I toted around a gun and a bunch of bullets, right? So, and I knew I wasn't always the brightest bulb in the pack, so to speak. But I was thankful enough to be raised around a core concept of resiliency, to rely on yourself, and almost a decade's worth of good old Army, right? Improvise, adapt, overcome, right? Especially on the enlisted side. Sometimes we get those objectives and we're like, this isn't going to add up, but we'll figure it out, right? So that I just mentally apply that concept to Salesforce and moved forward with it.
Yeah, I think that's really well spoken. Yeah, the shaking in your boots part. I remember the night I looked at my wife and was like, I think I'm just going to give up aviation. Like I'm going to give them my notice tomorrow, and I was working as a 1099, meaning I was kind of independent contractor working for a partner. And I called them and said, do you have enough work to kind of let me go kind of full time as a 1099? And they said, yeah, at least for the next 2 months. And I was like, okay, well, I'll figure it out. But it was terrifying, right? It was like, oh my God, am I really doing this? And like, how am I going to pull this off after 2 months? What's going to happen? So yeah, the shaking your boots part is legit. And I think for me, I was just getting old. Like I had flown a lot of night vision goggles in my career. My neck hurt, my back hurt. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And so here I am. Now my neck and back hurts because I sit on a chair all day and stare at a screen, but that's my fault for not getting up. How about anyone else?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick, David. For me, I had to retire. I was coming up on mandatory retirement, and so it was really kind of scary for me, staring that down and being a bosun's mate, kind of like, Jason said, I've got all these operational skills that don't translate into IT very well. So, I was fortunate that when I was at Coast Guard headquarters, I was the subject matter expert for the Coast Guard's first Salesforce implementation. And so that's kind of when I learned about it. That was just about 2 years before I retired. And as I was going through, defining requirements and learning about Agile in the process, I was like, this is pretty neat. And, all of us service members and pretty much everybody has been probably subject to some bad data system or multiple bad data systems. And to be on the sort of a change agent for making the UI user experience and user interface better for us end users, it was really neat. So I just got interested in it. I signed up for VetForce at that time, worked on my admin cert, and luckily I had some great people on the then Acumen Solutions and now Salesforce team saying, hey, you should really think about this. And I had great mentors and I was able to retire. Actually, I retired exactly a year ago tomorrow, and 1 month later, I started at Salesforce. So, I'm so happy to be here. I mean, it's great. So, but but some of the trepidation I had was old guy, 50 over 50 years of age, no tech background. A little bit of tech, but not much. And what am I going to do? So the imposter syndrome, all that, like Jason said, the whole shaking in your boots. Do I belong here? All very real things. So
yeah, and I think Geralyn kind of said it, like, I mean, how many of my friends have gone straight into GS jobs because it was comfortable, and they're slightly more happy than miserable because they were miserable in the uniform, but now they're just slightly better because they have to work mandatory hours, right? And now they have to go home at 4 p.m., right? But they're still doing the same job, and they're just like, oh yeah, it just pays the bills. And so that pivot is so hard, especially when it's like something like a 180 pivot from a bosun mate to, you know, going into IT, right? At Salesforce, right? Where we've got this Astro as our cult lore hero, right? And in the Coast Guard as a, you know, BM, you probably laughed out of the boat there for it. So yeah, it's a big change. How about anyone else on the panel?
I'll just add one thing, that it is an uneasy time in tech, but I still feel like more secure in the Salesforce ecosystem than I ever have. I think I joined the military for security, you know, way back in '99. And when I was on active duty as a reservist, my GS job was Rift. And so I came back from active duty with no job. And then I spent a few more years as an underemployed military spouse after I got out. And I just think I've been chasing something secure for a long time. I worked in marketing for 20 years, and I always felt like there's no security in this role at all, until I started getting certified. And then, you know, recruiters still reach out to me. I still see many Salesforce customers that have a lot of need for Salesforce talent. I feel like with my certifications that I did through Trailhead Military, that I have secured my employment for the next, you know, 20 years, however long I choose to work. And I think that's really important to me. And so when I look around at the noise of the layoffs and what's happening, I feel like I'm in charge of my destiny. And, you know, Salesforce Military is giving me all the tools I need. And then we have these awesome networks like all of us here today. It really makes me feel better about, you know, whatever's going on in the world.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. And I think we'll touch on that in just a little bit, because I'll be honest with you. I mean, we're here at Salesforce, but I think a lot of us are a little concerned, right? We've seen some let goes. We've seen layoffs from our friends who are out in other parts of the IT land. So all of a sudden it's gotten a little real, right? And so to think about what we're doing here tonight, which is the networking, and I don't want to get all teary-eyed or anything, but by networking and just having those connections, right? To say, hey, I'm out. Does anyone have anything that's open? And like, yeah, we got a head count, or no, this one is hiring. And that's important. Elio, go ahead. You had a hand raised.
Yeah, just a quick comment. And I think this is where the strength of networking really shows itself. You know, I've been in tech for 25 years. Like most of you, I was in artillery, a non-tech military role. And I think what the Salesforce world provides is truly marketable skills. If you stay connected to your network, and look, there are things that we can't control and there are things that we can. I agree with Abby. If you just make sure that you have a certain set of skills that you can market, it's just a matter of time where you're going to land that role. And there's a reason why you might be without a role, right? Maybe some of us, myself, I never thought I would be without a job. And 12 years ago, when the housing market crashed, I was already in tech for a good, part of my career. I did not expect to be out of a job, but I had Salesforce under my belt. And so I switched from being in software and hardware and moved into the cloud, and I was able to land roles. So it's, yeah, some things we can't control, others we can, and we should be looking at ourselves and how we position ourselves, whether it's a good economy or a bad economy. There's always going to be an opportunity for you to land a role. That to me has been a big shift in my thinking. It's, oh, I should be worried about jobs and not be looking for jobs because of the macroeconomic landscape. You should always have a plan. And to me, that's what I coach a lot of the people that I get an opportunity to mentor, is that no matter where you are in your career, if you have a plan and you're working on yourself, I think you'll be in a good place. Actually, a few people recently who I got an opportunity to talk to landed roles, and we just met through Veterati, and we had a simple talk. And before I knew it, they were celebrating on LinkedIn that they got hired in this economy. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's just a point I want to make is that we can look at the glass half empty or half full.
Roger, go ahead. You got a comment.
Yeah, so I just want to add, so I transitioned out in retired in September 2019. I did a recruiting job, but then I wanted to pivot into more technical roles. So I did that, and in March of 2020, so right when the pandemic hit, I was on a 3-month contract with Salesforce, and then the contract ran out. So I was unemployed, like right at the height of the pandemic, like nothing was happening. And if anyone here knows me, like I had networked like a fiend. So I had like a robust network, like I was all over the place. I reached out, I activated my entire network, nothing, completely blank. Because like Roger, we love you, you're the best, but we are not hiring right now just because the world is falling apart. So I was unemployed for 3 months. So what was it? July, August, and September of 2020. And so kind of to what some of the folks are saying, like have a plan. So I was unemployed 3 months. I got 3 certifications. Because if there's one thing in Salesforce that's going to help you out is the certifications. So I would say definitely do that. Like prepare yourself, like make yourself a viable candidate. And things don't always go the way you want them to. It took me 3.5 months of applying to different roles in Salesforce that I did not get accepted for. Like I got like rejected. It's like, man, but I finally got it in. And I think it was Geralyn that said, making that leap of faith. So I heard a really good quote recently that the thing about the leap of faith is that first you take the jump, and then you grow wings on the way down, which is terrifying, right? But it's the like, like believe me, you can do it. Getting those certifications, activating your network, like those are the wings kind of growing. And then if you keep doing that and believe, like, you know what, it's going to get better, then it will. I mean, look, it worked for me. I was employed for 3 months, and I was like, oh my God, it's never going to happen, but it will. So just keep doing it, keep growing the wings.
Yeah, I think that is a great comment. I don't know if the Army Airborne School would agree with you on the whole jump first, but I hear you. But no, I mean that's important, right? Like I did it as a 1099, and I at least had some money coming in, and then I actually got offered a job by a partner, and I was like, it happened, and they took the job back that day. They actually came back 20 minutes later and said, "Ooh, sorry, we don't have the head count." And I was like, it's gone, and that's a little rough, but just keep your chin up and you keep going. Iris, you have a comment.
Yes, first of all, I want to say thank you, all of you, for being on this panel and just sharing your story and being so honest about it. There's a lot to be said for a community when everyone's all rah-rah when everything's going great. But the fact that we're all here, you guys are all here when things aren't so great, sharing your story, boosting people up. I haven't seen any of the other tech companies, should we say, out there giving this kind of optimism and continuation to continue following your dreams and your goals. So I love what you guys are doing here, especially like, as you know, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but we are in our largest resume release with 140 certified candidates, which is so exciting. So this time for this to be going on is kind of like, oh, we promised all these people incredible jobs, and now the companies are shutting their doors. So I just love what you guys are promoting, what you're saying, and you've woken yourselves up. You've given yourself an opportunity to go grasp a dream, which is really, really exciting. You can still do it. It just takes a bit of grit, and this community is here to back you up. I love it.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Iris, and thank you for saying that, because it is not exactly a fun topic to talk about. It's always fun when everything's rosy and we're all hiring 50 million people and the money's flowing, and then all of a sudden it kind of turns a little dark. And Roger said it, Doc said it, in different ways. It's about keeping yourself marketable, right? And having that plan if things are going to go bad. And most of us come from a military spouse background. We're used to planning not just one contingency, but 4 contingencies later, right? And just thinking about what am I going to do? And I've already had that kind of thought process in my head, and I know some others on here I've talked to. What are we going to do if that happens? And it's activate the network, like Roger said, and it's okay. Well, if that's what I'm doing, I'm going to slam out some certs, right? Because Roger said it. We weigh certs heavily in this ecosystem, whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent. If that's what we do, that's the game we play, and we go out there and we get some certs while we got time off, while you got time to focus, and just really kind of make yourself marketable. Okay. Any other comments on that? I'll get into another question. Here's always a favorite, and we've already kind of touched on it, and it's a topic that I think people who are new to the environment think those who are in the ecosystem or have been in here for a while don't have it, and it is imposter syndrome. Did you experience imposter syndrome, and how do you deal with it? And are you still dealing with it, and does it go away? And you've already heard my story, so I'll open it up.
All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and step out here, David. So imposter syndrome, that's why my office had to have a closet. You see that? That's where I keep it. It's right there at all times. The quicker I was to accept that, the faster I could move forward, right? And plus, private sector or Salesforce military community, like I've learned through very transparent conversations that sometimes if you have one of those moments, share it with them. Those who have been in the game with you or maybe a little bit longer, and they'll kind of help give you point by point or what have you. But I'm just going to step out there and say the quicker you accept that, the faster you're going to move forward, right?
Yeah, I think the quicker you accept it and the quicker you understand that it is part of the industry, right? You're always running into someone who's smarter than you, has more certs than you, has more experience than you. I had to give a demo to a partner, and I think the average person on there, probably the low time person on the call, had 10 years of experience in Salesforce and double digits in certs. And I've been in this for maybe 3 years. I don't know, probably 2-3 years. And I'm giving this demo. And so it's just there, and it's something you deal with. I usually say, like, that's what the shower is for. No one can see your tears, right? And so you're in there crying and no one knows, right? And like you said, Doc, it's perfect. You kind of go and I'll talk to some of the other SEs or my manager and be like, I feel super dumb right now. Am I dumb? And they're like, no, you're right on, you're fine. Or, hey, maybe yes, think about this. And you're like, okay. And I see Anastasia chuckling over there as a director and manager, so I'll hear her points on this. So I'll open it up.
Yeah, no, I was laughing because I feel like a relic. So I've been in this industry got my 15-year surfboard there. Wow. And my comments are twofold. So I will definitely tell you that this is the first time in my entire career I had an office. Everyone always notices my background and the piano, and that's a pandemic I inherited by a friend who needed more space, they couldn't move. It's not glamorous, but it looks glamorous, right? I used to work from my kitchen table and my small condos or my apartments with my 2 kids right at my feet, like, right? So my biggest thing to tell you is that if you feel it, someone else does too, okay? You are not alone. When I became a senior director and they're like, hey, you have 75 people under you. Yeah, it was scary and you're making decisions, but at the same time, you talk to people and you meet others who are VPs and above, and they're just like you, right? And there's people I know for 10 years in those roles, and it's like, I've known them, that's just so-and-so, but to them, oh, it's a VP. To me, do you know what I'm saying? So just remember that if you believe in yourself, believe in your brand, and focus on what you can control. Like right now is scary. I'm a single parent. but 3 years ago, my life blew up. But 3 years in a row, my career, I never dreamed it would be like this, right? The most amazing things come out of some really bad things, right? So just remember that sometimes when you are pushing, you have to kind of have to sit back and say, you know what? Things are going to happen how they're supposed to. I worked really, really hard. You know, I'm a great person, I have a great community, and just lean into that, right? So just because someone has a title or this and that, they are just like us. Everyone's a person. Person first, title second. That's what I tell people to remember. So I'm in my sweatpants today. Okay. So just living the dream.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
know that.
hiring, by the way. I do have open headcount. So my small plug is if the team that I oversee is the program project managers in the services organization of Salesforce. And so we are external consultants. So if anyone's any background or interest or would like to get into that and like to connect with me, and I can help you out as well. So.
And I put Anastasia's LinkedIn in the list there. So if anyone needs it, just scroll back in the messages. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah. So I mean, I mentioned it before, right? So the imposter syndrome. But luckily, where I work now in Salesforce, we actually have there's a gentleman his job is to help coach us to become better solution engineers. And it's not just a technical piece; it's the performance coaching piece of it. And one thing that he told me a couple weeks ago was that for me personally, I couple competence with confidence. So if I'm not competent and I don't know everything about the product, then I don't come off very confident about it. Which as a solution engineer, I'm in a sales role, so I'm trying to sell something. So if I don't come off very confident, then the customer is probably not going to believe that, it's probably isn't a very good product. So he's like, just because you don't know everything about the product doesn't mean you can't be confident about it. He's like, there are plenty of people in this world that are very incompetent, but extremely confident about their own abilities, And he's like, Roger, you are not one of those people. You know the product, and you just go out there, believe in yourself, and you can sell it. And for me, it's the decoupling of competency versus confidence. It's just, I mean, everyone's laughing because you've seen these people, you've worked for these people, you've seen them on TV where they'll just go out there and you're like, what in the world is this fool saying? But they own it like a boss, and you're just like, there's no way. So for me, it's part of having that confidence in yourself. And everyone has imposter syndrome, every single person. I remember when I was retiring, so I was on the same timeline pretty much as Dave Nava. And, just being the competitive kind of person that I am, I compared myself to Dave. And yeah, good luck with that one, right? So, I'm getting out there. I was like, oh, I've got 100 badges. I look over, Dave's got 300. I was like, yes, I got a certification. Dave's got 6. And then I'm just like, what, you kidding me? And so it's just that constant thing. And then I talked to Dave a few months ago, and he's like, yeah, man, I've got the worst imposter syndrome ever. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like, seriously, I'm like, I tried to chase you for so long, and there was no way I could catch you, and you have imposter syndrome. So it doesn't matter. Everyone has it. Just everyone on this call, everyone everyone feels like they're complete phony and fake. So I'm like, wow, Dave Nava has imposter syndrome. That blew my mind. So you're not alone. Welcome to the human race.
Yeah, it's like the Terminator saying, I don't know if I can do it. And you're like, wait, what? No, that can't be. Abby, you have a hand raised, and then we'll get a group picture here right after that.
Sure. Yeah, just a quick follow-up on, everybody covered it, but I've been doing distance running for a long time. I'm so slow. I'm literally the turtle at the back of the pack, and I just don't even care. And in my running group, we say your race, your pace. I really apply that everywhere, and it's super hard in the Salesforce ecosystem. It is so easy to look around and feel intimidated. But where else can you just ask questions and show what you don't know and ask for help, and people actually help you? So I appreciate the fact that I can just, be vulnerable and ask a lot of questions, and people help me. I think that's so rare, and I appreciate it so much. So I just encourage everybody to ask more questions.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. For those of you not at Salesforce, obviously we have our internal Slack channels, and a lot of times, you're not especially as a solution engineer, Roger can attest to this. we have a mile wide of depth of knowledge, but it's only an inch deep, right? We have to cover all these products. And so I'm not the smartest on every one of those products, but I know people who are, or I have channels that I can reach out to, and I can drop a note in there, hey, I need help with X product, and people will come flying out of the network and just flying out of the walls. What can I help you with? Here's a demo, here's a product I made. And you're like, whoa. And so it's impressive, different from everything I've ever experienced in my careers in life, the ecosystem and the networking and how people kind of look out for each other. It is an interesting culture. All right. Any other comments on imposter syndrome? Anything anyone else wants to bring up on that?
Yeah, just one quick thing. Sometimes you might get lucky and you get to work on with a client that you already know. So for me, it made it a little bit easier because I worked on 2 Coast Guard projects once I got hired, and then became the PM for one of those projects, which was conversely the one that I was the subject matter expert for on the Coast Guard. So I knew all the people, knew all the business processes. So that really helped. But when I have things that, like, if I'm dealing with like network engineering type issues or certificates and things of that nature, I feel so far outside of my comfort zone, and sometimes have trouble. Abby, congratulations to you for feeling so open. Sometimes I get a little bit intimidated when I'm reaching out for help in some of those Slack channels. So that's been a hard thing to overcome sometimes. But yeah, it's I think I was just really fortunate, honestly.
Yeah, it's definitely not the funnest feeling, but like we've all said, it happens to everyone. Jason, if I ever see you again, I'll always look at your closet and be like, yep, I know.
Yep.
Let's see. Were there any tools, resources, or guidance that you relied upon during your transition, other than blind faith?
So for me, I would say Veterati was huge for a couple of reasons. So I remember having a conversation with Mike Nolan, and he said, Geralyn, get out there and talk to like as many people as you can in the role that you're interested in. And that was really important for me to really understand what the role is. And, talking to people who had been in the role previously and maybe now were in a different role or had switched from a different role into the success manager role, it was really helpful for me to be able to find those parallels that weren't obvious if you were just looking at a job description versus your job experience, right? It wasn't overtly obvious that there were connections. And so I think really getting an understanding from individuals that are currently in the role and have worked in the role of what is important to your bosses, what do you get measured on, what does success look like in your role, it really helps you get a good understanding of, is this really a path that I want to go down? Am I going to be happy in this role? And so I think continuing to have those networking calls and even past like when you already have a job is important still. So really prioritizing your professional development, things that are interesting to you, and not letting that go by the wayside, because things happen, as we've all talked about on this call. You may be let go by no fault of your own, right? And so continuing to have that professional development and continuing to allow that network to be nurtured is really important, not just when you need a job.
Yeah, I think always keep the doors open, right? What probably say will probably come out a little wrong. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but theoretically, I'm at the mothership, right? I have hit success or something, but you dumb or know when that could be pulled out from underneath you. And to have, like I already said, and some others have mentioned on here, have that backup plan. Think about it. Like, what networks do I have? What partners are out there that I know that have headcount and are looking for people? Anastasia, I'll be calling. But we just don't know, and keeping that network real, right? And keeping yourself marketable. We've already kind of mentioned it a couple times. So yeah, it's a good point. Abby, go ahead.
Yeah, I got my first Salesforce job by I had met somebody that owned a consulting firm, and I stayed in touch with them for like a year after that event, and just randomly reached out via email and said, hey, I'm considering being a consultant. And, you know, I'm so impressed by all the people who reach out to me on LinkedIn and just ask for 30 minutes. I think you'll find that most people will say yes if you do that. And I love what Geralyn was saying, like talk to as many people as you can and learn about the different jobs. And I don't think I can speak highly enough of Veterati. So just continue to grow that network and don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, that's why we're on this call. That's why we're on this panel. And all of us have been helped by this same network multiple times. So we know it works and we're willing to give back. So glad you're here.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about how this ecosystem tends to pay it forward, right? And people, like if you reach out and say, hey, do you have 30 minutes to talk? I've never had anyone say no, you know, and I generally will not say no, you know, and just try and fit it in when you can. And just taking that time, you know, be genuine in your request and what you're looking for. But knowledge is power, right? And just getting that and reaching out for it. All right. What was the most challenging aspect of your transition and how did you deal with it? There's a 2-pointer. I think for me, it was just guttural fear of like, can I even pull this off, right? Like, is this really gonna happen, or did I have too much tequila last night?
Well, I don't drink tequila, but I will say this, David. So one of the things that was kind of a really big challenge for me in transition was going from a network of folks who were always encircled around a given topic to now I'm jumping out of that swimming pool and I'm going over to the jacuzzi where I know no one, right? So that was kind of an issue for me. And it, again, pre-planning, I knew that was going to be the situation. So instead of just trying to learn Salesforce, what I did was I adopted what I call like a 3-front battle plan, to where I would learn, but I was also going to engage in the ecosystem and network, right? Engaging in the ecosystem meant understanding that there's more to Salesforce than just trailhead.org, right? I hear the admins podcast is coming back, and I'm a staunch advocate for that because I heard a naval senior chief talk with Jillian K. Bruce. I created a Twitter that night to reach out to that senior chief and say thank you for sharing. And then she got back to me, and it was like I was a race car driver with nitrous now, because she was pushing me. She was being a senior chief is what she was doing. You know, she was pushing me on down the line and got me involved with, you know, Maravis. And then later on, I was open to the opportunity at hiring our heroes. So I'll say that, like, that was a big challenge for me. But again, just like imposter syndrome, just face it and try to build a battle plan around that, right?
Yeah, I think I find that I doubled down on studying. Like I went, as I call it, full NABA, and I'll tell them that. You know, I was getting up at 4 a.m. and studying, right? And I was studying for certs because I knew certs mattered. And, you know, in the workplace here, a lot of what I deal with, you know, is learning like ERPs. You're like, what's an ERP? I had no idea what an ERP was when I was an aviator, or even when I was a 1099, you know, you're like, what? How does this matter to me? And so just trying to learn this new ecosystem, not only are you learning what is a custom field and a custom object, now you're like, okay, how does this all fit together in bigger enterprise level applications? And so integrations, still black magic voodoo to me. I don't know. Wizards somehow do that stuff. Funny, I was doing APIs the other day and I was like, what am I doing here? But anyone else in the panel have thoughts on that?
So I'll offer up when And I think for me, probably the biggest challenge of it is from I retired out, but it's a lonely thing to transition, especially when you're leaving the military because you're leaving the military culture, right? But even still, like if you're transitioning into Salesforce, chances are 10 out of 10 people that you speak to have no idea what Salesforce is. So they're like, "What are you doing?" Like, okay, like here's what, like it's a CRM, like it don't understand at all. So even so I think for me, like explaining it to my wife, if you have a spouse or a partner or even like best friend, somebody you can talk to and kind of like explain it to them, and they can like walk with you in this on this trail, because it is lonely. It's like people don't understand it. You're doing this by yourself, and of course, find somebody here, right? Find somebody in this call, part of the Trailhead military, because we've walked the path before. So find someone that you can talk to about it, because if not, like everyone you talk to, they're like, "What? Like, what are you going to sell stuff?" No, I'm not a salesman. I'm in a sales role, but yes. So it's find someone who can like walk the path with you, or at least someone you can like talk to about it, and they're like, "Oh, okay." They may not understand it, but they're there with you, and they can like empathize with you.
Yes, and in aviation, CRM is crew resource management. That's how you operate in the cockpit. So every time I said CRM, I would just put my head down, like it's over. Like this conversation is going nowhere. Like I do stuff with databases enough, and just move along. And now no one talks to me anymore. I don't know why. Anyone else have thoughts on the transition?
Yeah, Dave. Going from having been in the service as long as I was and reached as high a rank as I did in the enlisted workforce, and then so you're the one that always has the plan, to going completely flip that on its head.
Yeah.
You're now the most junior person with the least amount of experience on this team, and after being growing your career over that period of time, and then just jumping off the cliff and starting over again, that was daunting. But it went back to the network again. I had great people that helped me make the transition. Some great people at Acumen and Salesforce, and they kept saying, "Yes, you can do this," and just if there's anything you need, reach out. So network.
Funny story on that one. So I had been along the same lines. I had been, at the top of my career, right? I had been instructor, pilot, flight examiner, all that stuff. And so I was used to being top dog. Come in, got hired as a 1099 by someone who was silly enough to hire me. And I got these user stories sent to me. And I was remote, right? So there's no one you can kind of like tap on the shoulder and be like, "Hey, what is this?" And it was create an MD on account. And I was like, what's an MD? Master detail is what they meant, right? I had no idea. I had like cold sweat coming down my head. I was like, they're going to fire me today. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I was frantically texting one of my coworkers who had given me her number. And I'm like, "What is an MD?" And she finally comes on and she's like, "It's a master detail." And I was like, "What's a master detail?" And I was like, "Oh, this ship is sinking fast." But you just, like you said, you're back to the beginner mind, right? Like, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, what am I doing? So yeah, it's interesting. There is a huge shift in the ego to be top dog and now be bottom of the pile and like asking for help from everyone. And that's a big shift, and it's an important one. And it happens to everyone as they come in. So we've hit top of the hour. I've probably spoken way too long, but I'd like to open it up to the panel if there's any closing comments or thoughts.
Just a quick thanks. I have to drop for another call, but thanks everyone, and to the other panelists. Great being on a panel with you. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Abby. So before we close, I'd like to thank Abby, who's already out, Geralyn, Anastasia, Roger, Doc, Dennis, all for co-hosting tonight's session and being vulnerable a little bit, talking about the fears of it and the gut wrenching of the swap. And it's been awesome having you all, getting your perspective and your thoughts on the topics we discussed. With that, though, thank you all for attending. Hope to see you all next week. And we'll have some stuff posted up tomorrow, and have a great Wednesday night.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.